Hello, welcome back to Talent Thrives Here, our podcast where we discuss leadership and management in challenging times. With us today is our special guest, Chris Duggar. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hi, Wes.
Chris is an intellectual property lawyer from Los Angeles, California. Chris, you've been in practice, I think, almost 20 years now. It's my understanding you've worked on cases, it's of quite a wide range from infringements on microchip technology, exercise equipment, dental implants, crypto. That's a broad range of industries, Chris. Like I would imagine some people think it's just one narrow set of things. So I'm
Right.
curious, is the law applied similarly across all these different kinds of fields, or is there nuances between, from crypto to dental to all these other areas?
For the most part, I would say that the law is applied equally. The same rules and cases are applied equally across the board. You do have variations between what legal strategy is used to protect different things. So an artist, an artwork, a movie, a musical recording would be protected under the copyright, which has its own set of rules. And then, an invention would be protected under patent, which has an entirely different set of rules.
Right.
So that's the major distinction.
Okay. So okay, clearly not for the layperson to wade into.
Hmm.
All right. Um, I wonder also, are there some cases that you've worked on in the past that you're able to talk about certain elements of them or certain pieces of that history, without obviously getting into too much trouble. But I'm curious if there's some
Right.
cases that stick out in your practice that you're able to discuss.
Sure. We've had, and this is public record, some cases involving dental implants, where one of the parties made compatible dental implants. I don't know if you know a dental implant. The implant goes into the gum, and then an abutment sits on top of that, and then the fake tooth goes on top of the abutment. So obviously there has to be compatibility between the the implant and the abutment. Um, so if one person makes a compatible implant, they have to have the same interior dimensions. But if those interior dimensions are covered by a patent, you can see why they might
Sure.
find infringement.
Yeah.
So those cases were interesting because also they trademarked that they were compatible with the leading brand. And
Mhm.
so yeah, there's a fine line to walk. You must show the products are different enough that there's not patent infringement, but
Right.
similar enough that they are in fact compatible, and that's a true statement.
Right.
So those cases were interesting. Some other cases, you mentioned the microchip cases. Um, a case I worked on against, some major manufacturers of telephones, and there was a new technology to make the microchips smaller. So the
Right.
prior technology, there was a gate, and then the current would go through here, and then the other part of the gate. And in order to make the gate smaller, what they did was they rotated the channel 90 degrees to make a fin, and
Mhm.
then the gate wraps around the top of the channel, and that allows you to put, obviously you can put more fins in the same amount of space, and so that would enables you to shrink the chip. So that was the 14 nanometer chips. I think now we're down to 6, 5, 4 nanometer chips,
Mm.
all using this technique. So yeah, it's a wide variety and a lot of technology to, when you get the case, you have to learn the technology yourself as if you were an innovator in the field. So it's
Right.
always
Right.
interesting.
Right. Lots of reading, no doubt. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Great. And was there I'm curious, so I think there was a Sarah Silverman case maybe in the news. Were you attached to any of that, or is it more just a story in the ether out there in pop culture?
That's a story that's going on. So they recently had a small setback. The judge dismissed most of the case, but with leave to amend. So that
Right.
means the Silverman camp is going to go back and they have a chance to rewrite the complaint and hopefully put in some more details that the judge will say, okay, these should go to trial. We should let a jury
Yeah.
decide these things. Um, so the case is against Meta, against Facebook,
Yeah.
and Silverman's camp. There's multiple authors involved, but Silverman's the most prominent. Um, alleged that the large language model, so Meta's is called Llama, but that Llama was the entire thing is a derivative work based off of her book.
Right.
And the court said, that doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't look anything like your book. It doesn't
Right.
recast your book or adapt your book. Likewise, Silverman's camp said that every output, every time you ask Llama a question, you get a response. That output is derived from, in part, Silverman's book.
Right.
And again, the court said, I don't buy it. You need to show me that there's a specific output that looks like it's derived from or an exact copy
Right.
of a passage from your book. And then we can, we can move forward from there.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because there are several other cases. Obviously, there's a lot of cases going on right now, but several of them do show in the complaint exactly that sort of copying. So in the New York Times case, New York Times is suing OpenAI. They've shown that you can get ChatGPT to output exact copies of New York Times articles. And I've got an example here. The New York Times complaint. This is an example from their complaint.
Yeah.
And they've put in red the text that is exactly the same. And there are only a few differences between the actual text from the New York Times and the output from GPT.
Right.
So GPT changes cabs to medallions, but otherwise the text block is virtually identical. And they have many, many examples of this in their complaint.
Right.
So,
Right.
That's going to be much tougher for OpenAI to get a dismissal on.
Right. Yeah, it's all sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, it's very cutting edge right now, right? There's a lot of these lawsuits going on
Oh yeah,
for
this is
AI related.
yeah, there's no standard. It's developing right now. People have theories about what they think is going to happen, but it's really up in the air.
Yeah.
Who's going to win and what? And so we're kind of seeing, even the Silverman case is one of the first rulings from a judge. And so we're seeing this is something that now we're seeing you must allege these, you must have these examples like the New York Times has to move
Right.
forward.
Right. Got to be very black and white, I guess. And then
Mhm.
because the other one I think we discussed before the call was George Carlin, where there's a podcast where someone took his likeness and I guess
Mhm.
edited a bunch of clips to make a special sort of, I don't know, I haven't seen it yet myself, but I just saw it earlier today, the news about it, where they've used his voice, they've used his jokes, they've created probably a voice avatar,
Mhm.
um, and launched a podcast thinking it would be quite funny.
Mhm.
And I think there are two comedians attached to it.
Mhm.
But of course, the George Carlin's estate has went, oh, hold on a minute here.
Yeah.
You've taken his likeness, you've taken his voice, you've created a product out of it. Where do we start? you know,
It's interesting because it seems the most egregious of these cases, right? If you take the whole internet and you put it together and you make an AI, okay, and if it copies a New York Times article, you can kind of see, I wish you wouldn't do that, but I hope you can fix it and
right.
whatever. Maybe you should take a license from us. If
Yeah.
you directly copy someone who's passed away and
Yeah.
then create it, it seems worse.
Yeah.
So what I think they did was they took all of his specials and they fed that into an AI that they
Right.
had that
Yeah.
then output a 1 hour special. They called it George Carlin, I'm Glad I'm Dead.
Right.
And it riffs off of things he might say, according to
Right.
them, were he alive. I listened to less than 5 minutes, and they had a joke about how most people would not like to have um, AI comedians, but there's
Yeah.
one case where it would be useful or would be good. In the case of uh, Bill Cosby,
Right.
would be better an AI comedian than a real comedian.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
interesting whether or not it mimics, what Carlin would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
it did have his delivery.
Yeah. Yeah. And musicians are looking at it, artists are looking at it. Yeah, I'm sure it's impacting the legal profession. Um, it feels to me like the tech got out of the gates way ahead of anyone really understanding what it was going to do. No one really had an idea of the depth of impact it was going to have in so many different industries and so many different areas. Um, a lot of what we deal with is in the entertainment field, and it reminds me very much of some of those early sampling cases that started where
Mhm. Yeah.
people are sampling music. The famous one that's out there, the one I hear all about a lot, is Puff Daddy or P Diddy taking a line off of "Every Breath You Take" from a
Mhm.
Police song,
Right.
and it became a hit. And Sting sued, and I can't remember the deal is he gets $5,000 or $10,000 a day for the until P
For
Diddy
sample.
dies, something like that. It's
Wow.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah, and apparently it was like a no-brainer in the court case. They're like, "Yep, no, you absolutely ripped it off, and it became a big hit. Therefore,
Mhm.
you owe him royalties forever." And they battled the numbers, not official. Some say it's five, some say it's 10, some say it's in
Right.
between those numbers. But still, it reminds me of Napster too. When Napster started and disrupted the
Right.
music industry, and even Netflix is kind of like the bust up to cable TV as well. So but this AI tech, I think, is unlike anybody really understood. And it seems like a lot of the AI firms, um, I don't know if they got legal representation at the beginning to understand, can we do this? Who knows?
I think they definitely did.
Yeah.
Many of the AI models are based off of the data sets were created by nonprofits.
Okay.
And so, but the nonprofits are a wing of, then created a for-profit wing,
Right.
OpenAI, that created the for-profit ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But so doing that two-layer approach is an attempt to insulate from copyright infringement. If a nonprofit does it, makes the copies, theoretically, that might be a point in your favor.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that demonstrates, some legal strategy right out of the gate.
Mm. Right. Right. Yeah. I'm surprised. It seems like, um, this George Carlin as an example, you would hope that they would have figured out. I really wonder if they did it for the publicity. Did they think like
Oh, I'm sure.
we're going to get so many eyeballs on this, we're going to create such a splash. Sure, we're going to get sued, but let's go for it. And maybe the yield off of it is there's some financial collateral over a long period of time that makes sense for a business play there.
So I
Um,
read the Carlin lawsuit. I should say I scanned it.
right.
And they point out that the special itself was not monetized on YouTube, but
Okay.
that there are links to buy uh, the merch for the channel and to subscribe to the channel for the
Yeah.
things. So that's the sort of economic benefit that they're trying to receive there. Yeah, so definitely seems like the fame or the infamy of putting that out there is part of what they were going for.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to see the accounting on that. If it pays for itself over time,
Yeah.
or if that was a really bad idea, you know. Uh, but it reminds me of not only George Carlin, but I think of all these musicians that have passed away, and same sort of thing. Someone could take their likeness, take their songs, and then
Mhm.
build. I've got several friends who are musicians, and that's what they're worried about. People sort of, hey, Chat GPT, can you build me a song in the vein of Johnny Cash or
Mhm.
somebody,
Mhm.
and it again really goes back to almost like the sampling thing. To me, it's like
Mhm.
there's someone that owns that stuff, and I do find it interesting that I see even on LinkedIn now, it's almost turned into a social media thing where people are chatting about everything. LinkedIn used to be very clean; it used to be business only. Here's your resume, here's your
Yeah.
background. But now they've built in these sort of social media tools, and I have noticed people saying, well, it's completely random. It just scans millions of things and kind of gives you a soup of things.
Mhm.
And there's a sort of naivete of some people that they just don't think it's a problem. Um, and I guess, more cases like this will start educating people. Like, no,
Mhm.
no, if you didn't
Regarding the
understand before.
yeah, what you mentioned about the musical artist, worrying about something being made in the style of,
Yeah,
that's partially being addressed in a case that's California class action of
yeah,
some visual artists who are suing. I think that one is Midjourney, maybe,
yeah,
um, or Stable Diffusion. You know,
right.
that you can put in an input for, I'd like a picture of a still life done in the style of, artist XYZ, and then you
Yeah,
get a still life in that style.
right,
And they've had a motion to dismiss, and the court has dismissed, again, giving them another chance to amend,
right.
but had dismissed it and said, in the style of probably isn't enough. It would be
Right.
better for your case if you could show me something that was closer to a fake, closer to an
Right.
exemption production that
Hmm.
replaced the need to buy your actual artwork
Yeah.
rather than to make something like that.
Yeah. It reminds me too of um, auto manufacturers and motorcycle manufacturers, these sort of things. They often build a clone of a popular brand.
Mhm.
And I see it, I don't know about so much in automobile, but I definitely see it in motorcycles where there's a blatant ripoff, so to speak. It's
Yeah.
so much close to the original that you're like, well, that is the same motorcycle, at least visually.
Mhm.
And so that's my it's a concern going forward. Again, a lot of people in our industry and in the work in the entertainment industry I work with, it keeps them up at night right now, right? No one's really, a lot of them didn't see AI coming the
Mhm.
way it has broken out, and it's an, I don't know, it's just new ground. It feels like a frontier, and the law's probably going to catch up to it
Mhm.
eventually, but it seems like bleeding edge right now. Is that a fair comment to make?
I think so, yeah. And it's very unpredictable what's going to happen. And I think you're going to see, particularly the big players, the New York Times. I know it's been reported the Authors Guild is in talks to license their materials to OpenAI, perhaps to get it done before there's a ruling.
Yeah.
Um, I know Associated Press has already licensed some of their content to OpenAI.
Right.
So
Right.
I think if you're in the business, you're weighing that option. Do I wait to see what the law is going to be, or do I
Yeah.
try and broker a deal for a license now and uh, get while the getting's good? Um, I think
Yeah.
it's a real tough calculus for people in the business.
Yeah. I was curious about the whole stock photography model where photographers might take, I don't know, several hundred shots of something.
Mhm.
Maybe they've got one or two that get used in a magazine or an article or whatever they're doing, an ad. And then they've got this sort of B-roll of all these shots, and they would
Right.
sell them to a Getty Images or one
Mhm.
of those stock photography houses, and then get whatever royalty off of that image if it sells. Typically I found ad agencies would buy those. I need a photograph of whatever, and they'd go through the catalog and go, okay, we'll purchase that, we'll purchase that.
Mhm.
Much cheaper than them hiring an artist for the day or a photographer
Right.
for the day and coming up with original. So I was super curious to see if that kind of business model might hit the art world with AI, where you would say, sure, these are the 6 paintings I've done and I'll upload them to Getty or somebody. But if anyone buys them, then I get whatever the percentage is, or I get a royalty off that.
Mhm.
And I thought that might be an interesting user case if it gets to that, and that might be a workaround. The other thing, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a couple technologies now that artists are putting on top of their work if they're uploading anywhere to the net. Now there's one called there's a glazing process. I guess it makes it harder for the scanner to scan the image. And then there's
Is
another
it
one,
Nightshade?
Nightshade. That's the other one I heard about. Yeah.
The poison pill you insert into your art so it can't be uploaded. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly how those work. I think it works to obfuscate what the image is
Right.
when the OpenAI or whoever tries to scan it. So it might be a
Yeah.
picture of a dog, but um, if OpenAI can't tell it's a dog or
Yeah.
thinks it's something else, then it's not going to be useful to make generative copies.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm dead curious. I'd love to see sort of a template or examples of how it in action, to see, Because my understanding is, yeah, it's supposed to really confuse
Mhm.
the AI tools. It feeds in some sort of confusion into their
Mhm.
model.
You know,
So
I think the way they actually work is that you take the image, it performs a mathematical process on it, it essentially encrypts it,
yeah,
and then takes this image, encrypts it, interpolates the encryptions, and then decrypts it.
right,
So I wonder if it just, you know, messes up that step of the encryption,
right.
by adding in some mathematical complexity.
Well,
I'm not familiar how that technology works.
yeah. Maybe you'll get a case soon, and you'll have to study up deeper on it.
Yeah.
Huh, excellent. I'm curious if also there was a Getty Images case I think you'd mentioned to me earlier. I
Mhm.
don't think we've touched on that, but and was that the Obama image of hope? Was that the one, or was it something else related to that?
So the Obama image is really this kind of goes back to the Sarah Silverman or New York Times, the difference there. The
Yeah.
Obama image is a good example of a derivative work.
Okay.
So we have the photograph of Obama and then the
Yeah.
derivative work, um, of the poster. They
Yeah.
took the original photograph and made some changes.
Yeah.
In Silverman's case, she couldn't show that Meta that it made something that was similar to her work, but just with some changes. Versus New York Times case, they've shown not only is it similar to, it's exactly the same thing.
Mm, mm,
So that was the point of showing that image. Um, the Getty Images case, it's got a lot of the same flavor as some of the other cases. It's got copyright infringement. Um, they took off the watermarks and other digital controls.
right.
But one of the issues they've raised, and New York Times raised this as well, is tarnishment. You're putting out a bad product, and
Mm.
people are going to think that it came from us, and now they're
Ah,
not going to want to use our product.
I
And
see.
so I've sent you a couple of examples from the Getty Images
Yeah.
lawsuit. This is actually
Yeah.
in their pleading, and you can see something that is their watermark. You can see that Getty Images watermark
Yeah.
because the AI reproduced that.
Right.
But then the rest of the photo is horrific, right? We've got
Yeah.
uh, uh,
Yeah. There's
red
one with a
dress.
soccer player where the there's like the legs are distorted
The
and
limbs, the
the
limbs
arms
are
are all messed up. Yeah. This is
disturbing.
very disturbing. Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting they wouldn't have blurred the Getty images up. I used to work in advertising years ago, and just Photoshop. There was constantly sort of MacGyvering images and fixing up things and
Mhm,
highlighting and frosting over or making them better, or sometimes stretching the image to different places to make it unrecognizable.
mhm,
Um, so it's interesting to me to in print media people have been compiling images and cutting them up for years and compositing them into different formats. Um, but it hasn't been, I guess the tools now are so fast. I don't know. I'm trying to sort of put apples to apples on that kind of
mhm.
equation. Um, in this sense, I literally remember working in a magazine many, many years ago, probably 25 plus years ago. And we would take other images and distort them
Right.
deliberately. It was faster to build the artwork we were trying to build than to build it from scratch. So we would do
Mhm,
a composite of number of things. um, Again, trying to mask the origin of where they came from significantly so that we would not get in trouble.
mhm,
And we did occasionally get in trouble. I must admit we occasionally got caught with um, some things, but yeah. So I guess the other thing lately is that the machines can do it so much faster,
right.
um, and there is this sort of issue with there's still an element of people out there who just don't understand that these things are owned by somebody else. Just because they came
Mhm.
through a random generator or some kind of tool does not absolve you from the responsibility of who owns that, right? And
Right. Yeah, I
yeah.
think the output aspect of these cases is the bigger problem for, like you said, when you recreate something that someone else owns is the bigger problem for for the AI companies here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess the other element is if you're not going to publish them publicly and you're not going to monetize, then it's a hobby, right? Then it's,
Mhm.
I've heard of people saying, "Oh, I just built like 5 paintings for my house, all using Mid Journey, and I love them." I'm like, "Well, that's fine. If it's a hobby tool,
Mhm.
good for you." But I think the minute you put this one's for sale and it's X number of dollars,
Mhm.
bam, now you've walked right into a commercial application of it, um, and that's where this sort of opens up.
Yeah.
I'm curious too. I'm not sure if you touched on this, but the SAG actor, the whole sort of thing with the writers and the actors last
Mhm.
summer, and the video game industry is looking at that as well now. There's a number of industries that I think sort of we're seeing unionization in some areas that
Mhm.
never were unions before. But have you touched on any of that in your practice, or is that sort of more peripheral to what you're doing right now?
That's more peripheral to what I'm doing. That's more peripheral to what I'm doing. I know
Sure.
sort of the overview of the various deals. Um, my understanding that the SAG after one is not the final deal, it's only the deal points.
Right.
And so there's a lot of room for things to change as those deal points are fleshed out and then as they're applied in practice as we see going forward.
Yeah.
So it's very much a starting place and not the ending for
Yeah.
these negotiations.
Right. Right. Good. Yeah. I agree with you. I think a lot is going to evolve. Plus, from my understanding, it was a 3-year deal. So I would
Mm,
imagine 3 years from now, we could see a whole different conversation happening
we
as
can do that.
their collective
Mhm,
agreement matures.
mhm,
And the technology will be different in 3 years. There'll be a lot of advancements. There'll be much more case law out there and precedent set. So I think that, the environment around this will be significantly different 3 years from now. So
mhm.
Chris, we'll have to get you back and talk about it then.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, I'm just cognizant of the time. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss, or should we wrap?
I guess I'd like to thank our friend Hillary Johns for introducing me to you.
Yeah.
She's a good friend and a great tri lawyer, and I'm grateful that she made the introduction.
Yeah.
Um, and if you want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Chris
Perfect.
Duggar, and I think that's about it.
Excellent. Chris, thanks again. Thanks very much for your time tonight. And hopefully we cross paths at some point, but hopefully I'm not on the other end of some sort of legal case with you.
Hope
All
so.
right. Thanks again. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care now.
Thank you.